Well, hey there, my name is Erica Anderson. I'm a freelance writer and author of the new book, Reason to Return: Why Women Need the Church and the Church Needs Women. As I was doing research for this book, though, I read a lot of books about the church that were super helpful in educating myself and getting resources and research for my book. And so I thought, hey, why not let people know the books that I thought were super helpful? So I'm going to give you my top ones. So here we go. Number one, A Place to Belong by Megan Hill. This is a beautiful, simple little book about the importance of, the structure of, and why we need the local church. I love this so much. I quoted Megan in my book. She is a writer with the Gospel Coalition, and so I highly recommend this one. Number two, Letters to the Church by Frances Chan. I know many of you probably love Frances Chan as I do. This is one of the first books that I read in my research for writing my book, and I thought it was just such a beautiful definition and picture of the simplicity of the church. He talks a lot about small church, house churches, nothing against mega churches coming from me. But I think reading this, you'll get a really beautiful perspective of what church is meant to be, what it's intended to be, and maybe a little different from what you may have experienced in the past. So, Letters to the Church by Frances Chan. Next up, The Good Portion, The Church, Delighting in the Doctrine of the Church by Erin Wheeler. I thought this was great because just growing up, I was not really educated a lot in terms of like why we go to church or why God created the church. And some of those core foundational things that I really needed to solidify in my mind, Erin was able to do that in here. She talks about everything from like church discipline to why we have elders and all of that stuff. And it just really helped give me a more solid understanding. All right, next up, Church Forsaken. I actually read this one pretty early on in the process as well. This is by Jonathan Brooks, and this is about Jonathan's experience starting a church or leading a church in inner city Chicago. I believe that's where he grew up, and it is just such an incredible look at how the church can be for the community. The church can integrate within the community to make it a better place, a better space, to uplift everyone in all the neighborhoods, to make our he talks a lot about, being in Babylon and, making the city our home, to plant gardens, to raise our families. Like that's what he's done here. And there is so much evidence of how God was so faithful to Jonathan and his calling to start this church. And so I think anyone that is interested in learning what the local church should be all about, this is a wonderful example of that. Disappearing Church by Mark Sayers. He also has one called Reappearing Church. And this is one that I thought was super helpful. And one of the first ones I read, again, I guess the ones that I read first were the ones that were most impactful on me. Mark Sayers is a voice that you have got to get in your head. He's an amazing cultural commentator. He's from Australia, so he has a little bit of a larger perspective than myself. But he really looks at this from a 40-foot view or a 400-foot view. So I recommend Disappearing Church, Reappearing Church, and anything else that Mark Sayers says or does. Next up, When Narcissism Comes to the Church by Chuck DeGroat. I thought this was a really good one because it really helps you to identify some of the markers of like toxic leadership in churches, which is very that's easy to happen because people are revered as pastors. They look up to them. Sometimes there's not enough accountability, and narcissism does play into that. When you think about the kinds of people maybe that are drawn to a profession where they are leading a church, I'm not saying everyone is like that, and obviously God calls people to do that. So not at all bashing pastors, but I think especially in having gone through a lot of what's happened the past couple of years with Me Too and Church Too, I think this is an important book to just keep an eye out for, like, is this happening, or how are we keeping our church leadership accountable, and what are some red flags? I found it really helpful. And then lastly, I've got my book, Reason to Return: Why Women Need the Church and the Church Needs Women. Now, this is not a debate about complementarianism versus egalitarianism. This is about women and the unique spiritual gifts that they offer the church body, and how the church body is not complete without them. But beyond that, it's not just about the church, because we know that the church, as I've learned from the other books and in been writing this book, the local church membership, that's just one part of our holistic faith. It's one part of the pie, but it's an essential part of the pie. However, if we are not focusing on things like discipleship and prayer and worship and accountability and all those other things, going to church on Sunday for an hour, not going to be that great. And maybe that's been your experience. Maybe that's why you left the church. But I wanted to talk about, why maybe those past experiences weren't so great. And so Reason to Return will give you a compelling reason to return to church, or reason to go deeper into your faith. It is specifically written to women and for women. However, a lot of the points I make are really for men, women, whoever. I do have a little bit of a specialization on moms in some of the chapters, because I am a Christian mom trying to raise my kids and root my kids in the faith. But I think that can be helpful to anyone that has a young person in their life that they love. So those are some of the books that have been most impactful on me in terms of the church, the local church, why it matters, why God created it, and why we need to be a part of it. I would love to talk with you more about this. I send out a weekly newsletter for Christian women. You can find that at the in the text below. You can also order Reason to Return on Amazon, christianbook.com, or Barnes & Noble. I would love to hear from you. Follow me on Instagram at Erica_Anderson, or leave a comment if you have any questions or any suggestions to add to this list. I would love to hear it. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you next time.